Hey, what's going on? My name's Rob. Today we're going to be doing a just code together type thing where we're going to build a to-do app with Rescript and React. So this assumes a couple things. One, that you know Rescript, or at least the basics of Rescript, right? This is a really Rescript learning experience. And number two, that you know React. If you don't know Rescript, I would go check out my tutorial on Rescript. It's 10 videos so far. There will be more to come. But it gives you a really good idea of the basics of Rescript. Rescript, if someone shows you how to do it, it's really not that hard of a language to pick up. And it has a lot of really great benefits over TypeScript and JavaScript. As far as the React side, I would say that if you know React and you know Rescript, then Rescript is not that difficult. So you're probably good on that side of things if you just know the Rescript. But this video is going to be really just a way to showcase React and Rescript together. And how you might think about integrating the two, right? So they're meant to go together in a lot of ways. Not always, but I mean it's a big use case for Rescript is to be used with React. So first things first is if you want to follow along, which I encourage you to do, you're going to want to run a command to get Rescript and React started. There's actually, I didn't know about this for a long time, there's actually an npx create React app template you can use. So you can see mine here, and I'll post this in the description as well. npx create React app. I've named mine to do demo, and then you use a template, right? So dash template rescript dash app is what you want. And when you run this, you'll get something like the project that you see in front of you here. It gives you an index.res file, a header, and an app, which is really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and Control-C that. And let's do yarn start. Actually, there's a couple things we need to do. First thing we need to do is to do yarn restart. So yarn restart runs the Rescript compiler. That will compile it to JavaScript for us, right? So we're going to run that. And then we're going to run yarn start in a separate terminal in the same directory. And let's see if we can get that up for us. It's going to come up over here. I'm going to drag that into the appropriate window. That's way too big right now. There we go. And you should see something like this. So that is what you get with npx create React app with the Rescript template, which is really nice. And again, like this is something I didn't know about for a long time. If you're starting with Rescript React, this makes it way easier to get your Rescript project set up. They have nice templates, but there's also a Next.js template, by the way. Maybe we'll do that one in some other time. Let me get back here. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is really nice, but of course we're going to go through and make this our own. I'm going to go ahead and delete this header file. Let's move that to trash, and then that will mean that this can go away. And let's just put a placeholder here for now. Foo, right? It's a good placeholder. And we have to turn that into a React string, and we need to close our h1 tag. And I think what I may do here is, to make this easier, is split my window in half. Because there's not going to be a whole lot on the screen. We're really not going to be very interested in how this looks. This is mainly going to be about, how to get the to-do functionality working. Although we'll do a little bit of styling. So this is all we have so far. It just says foo. But I think the first thing we're going to want to do is set up our state. I'm going to be using a reducer, so React.use reducer to build the state out. What that means for us is that we need to set up our initial state and then the reducer that it will use. And before I start that, I'm just going to say that this is a personal preference for me with React, whether it be TypeScript or Rescript, is that any state that's more than just a little bit complicated, I use reducers. I think they're a good pattern. I like that my actions enumerate everything that can happen that will impact state, at least in my component. And in many cases it's easier to test because you can just test the reducer in isolation. So we're going to go ahead and get this set up. So first off, let's go ahead and define our state. First, let's do that. Let's say type state equals to-dos, and this to-do is going to be an array, but we need to define the array shape. So we're going to do that really quick here, or the to-do shape maybe is a better way to put it. Type to do is going to be, let's give it a title, which is going to be type string, and then a description, which will also be of type string. And now we can move this to do type into our array, just like that. So that's good. That's good. And then the other thing we're going to want to set up here is that there's going to be an input field, and so the user will be able to type into the input field what they want their next value to be. And so we're going to add that to the state as well. So let's just call that input value or something, right? And that will be a string. So now we can make our initial state, which is going to be of type state. And let's go ahead and say to do, maybe we should change this to to-do list. Let's call this to-do list instead. And that'll be an empty array, and the input value will be an empty string. So this looks good so far. Next up is we need to define to define our actions. We'll probably add more as we go, and depending on how time goes, I mean, we may or may not add additional things, right? So let's just start with some basics. I'm just going to say type actions equals. I'm going to explain what I'm doing here in a moment. But let's say add item. That's going to be to do. Let's call it add to do. I think that's better. Or it could be clear items. So this will get rid of all the items, or clear to do's really. And then input changed, which will handle our input event. And we're expecting a string from that because it's going to give us a new string. So hopefully you're familiar with this. If not, I would suggest, going and looking at my video on rescript type variants. But essentially, what this does is it gives us the different kinds of actions that we can have and the associated payload that we're expecting with each of those. So this add to do is a type, and it's going to give us, it's a variant type, and it's going to give us a to do item, right? So that's going to set us up to have exhaustive pattern matching here in a moment, or reducer. You'll see what that looks like. Hopefully you already know what this is. If you don't, then you'll see an example here. If you need more explanation, then you can go check out another video. But basically, the equivalent of this in TypeScript is going to be discriminating unions. So let's go ahead and say let reducer equals state, and then it's going to be action. And then we're going to say switch on action. And this action is going to represent each of these cases. So first, let's do add to do. We'll do it in the same order, right? We'll say add to do. So if we're getting a to do item, then we want to add that to do to the to do list. So what we want to do is, I think we need to wrap this in parentheses. I'm not sure though. What we want to do though is we want to spread the existing state. So we're going to make a copy of our state. And then we're going to update the to-do list. So to-do list. And then we need to add our new to-do to the to-do list. The best way to do this with rescript currently, because spreading is not supported inside of arrays, is to use a concat function. So let me just show you what I mean. What we want to do in JavaScript would be something like this, where we say state.to-do list to do. And for hopefully everyone, for those of you who are familiar with JavaScript, this would just append it to the list in any new array. Since we can't do that, what we're going to do instead is we're going to use a concat function from the JavaScript module. So to do that, we're going to say state.to-do list, and then we're going to say js.array2.concat, and then we're going to make an array with just our to-do inside of it, like this. And you can see that it's going to put the two together. That's the point. I'm getting a warning here, by the way, this yellow squiggly, because, excuse me, there's other possible cases that we haven't covered here. So our switch statement isn't exhaustive. So we want to make sure that we cover clear to do is input change. But that's all that means there. It's actually very helpful for our exhaustive pattern matching. So the next thing is going to be clear to do's. This one's going to be really easy. So clear to-dos is going to say, let's clone the state, and then our to-do list will become empty. And then for our last one, input changed, it's going to take a string, or let's say new value or something. And for this one, we're going to say state, and then input value will become the new value, like this. So our yellow squiggly goes away. So there's one small change I want to make to this now I think about it. I think when someone adds a to-do, the input that they type into, we need to just clear it out. So up here at the top, at this add to-do, let's go ahead and just say, input value as an empty string. So that we'll fix that for us. So great, we have our reducer set up. So nothing really visual yet. We're really just getting our reducer set up. We have a couple actions that we decided that we want. So let's go ahead and get some stuff on the screen. So let's go ahead and get the reducer here. So it's going to take a tuple. So I want you to be sure to pay attention to this, because state and dispatch are going to go inside parentheses, not in square brackets, like you're probably used to with TypeScript. And the reason for that is because parentheses in this context means that it is a tuple, right? So we're going to pass reducer and initial state. And now we need to start putting some things on the screen. So I think the first thing we'll do is let's go ahead and see if we can get this input working. So I'm going to say input. We're going to go ahead and give it a type as text. Notice in rescript, by the way, because type is a reserved word, it has you put this underscore after type. So type underscore equals text is how you would do that in rescript. And then we want to have some kind of handler for this. So for now, let's go ahead and just start with onChange. Let's do this up here in the body, because this is actually a little bit, there's a part of rescript that makes this a little bit verbose that I'm going to keep outside of our JSX. So we'll say handle input. And this handle input is going to go in the onChange, handle input. And it's going to take an event as a parameter. So in JavaScript, what you're probably used to, or TypeScript, is e.target.value to get the value off the target. So, this is a little bit verbose, and you may hate it, but it's just part of rescript. The way we actually handle this with rescript is, instead of using e.target.value, we actually pass the event to a function that will return to us a bunch of stuff about the target. And so I'll show you what I mean. Let's say let new value equals, and the module is React. I believe it's React form. Or is it React event? It's React event.form dot target e. And then, so this returns to us a bunch of stuff about the target, and then that's in the form of a rescript array. And so we use bracket notation to grab value. So again, this just means e.target.value. It's just in the way that rescript handles it, which is with React event module with a submodule form and then a function called target. Again, this is a very rescript way to do things. Lots of modules, lots of functions, kind of backs away from a lot of like nested objects and things. So now we have the new value. We can dispatch that new value to our Redux store. And this is going to be our input changed action, right? So let's go ahead and do that. There's two ways we can do it. Let's do it the probably more intuitive way, which is like this. The problem with doing it this way, the syntax, is that we have a lot of parentheses. So with rescript, we can do piping, which is really good for function composition. In this case, we're sort of composing dispatch and input changed. So what you could do as well is you could say new value dispatch, new value input changed, and then dispatch. So these both mean the same thing, It's just that if we want to work from the inside out, we can use this pipe operator. And I think I'm going to actually do that. So we have our handle input. And to prove that this works, we're just going to temporarily put state dot input value here. And this is going to want to React string. We may have to wrap that in element, I'm not sure. But we should now have two-way data binding on this. And you can see that it is indeed binding to our state, which is great. That's what we want. And I think what we probably should also do is put value on this so that when we clear this out programmatically, it will also clear out our input. So let's go ahead and do that and make sure nothing breaks. That looks good. So we have our to-do item and the input. The next step is that we want to do an add. So add a new to-do. So to do that, let's go ahead and let's make a button. And we're just going to put add in all caps here. And I have to do my string. Pipe that into react.string. And that shows up here, which is great. So on click, this is going to dispatch our add to do. And that's going to expect a title. And I put description on this, but I really didn't mean description. There's no need to have a description. Let's do is complete, is done. Let's make that a Boolean. So with that, I think what we can do is let's change this up a little bit, because really, we have this to do. We could just put the new to do in every time, but I think it's better if we just pass the title to the to do, and then the add to do will tell us that it's not done yet. So maybe we just do it this way. Let's change this to string. Oops. We'll change this to title, and then we'll change this to title is done false. That way we only have to dispatch the string value. Totally could have done it the other way. I just think that having this default controlled in the reducer is probably a little bit more idiomatic. So when we click on click, we're going to say that we want to dispatch add to do. And we're going to refactor this again here in a moment. But for now, let's just say that we want add to do, and we can say state dot input value, and that will work. And we could demonstrate it. But there's one other improvement we can make here with our reducer. The state dot input value, we really don't need to pass this as a parameter to our add to do. Now that we're putting the to do, the is done part of if to do inside of this, we could do the same thing with our input value. So I think what maybe we'll do instead is we'll say state dot input value here. Let's get rid of this to simplify our action. And that means we can get rid of this down here. And I'll simplify what's going on in the JSX a little bit more. So I think I'm happy with that. Okay, so that's going to add a to-do to our array. The problem is that we have no way of confirming that because there's nothing happening on the screen. We could use our React Dev tools and whatnot, but let's go ahead and just build out the to-do list. So this part may drive you a little bit nuts with how you have to map over elements with React. It'll throw you for a loop the first time or two, but after that, it's really not that bad. And there's some similar stuff to this React.string that happens. So we're gonna roll with it. So let's go ahead and do this. We're gonna say state dot to-do list, and then we're going to use a module called belt.array, and that's going to map. And for right now, we're just going to use the map. There's also a map with index, which if we decide to remove individual to-do items, we'll use probably the index to identify them. But we'll skip that for now. And now we'll say, let's give this a div. And this may be a little bit ugly, but it's okay. And we're going to say to-do.title into react.string and built.array.map. So this is what I was talking about here a moment ago. You'll notice we're getting a red squiggly here. It's not actually showing me my error. There it is. You're going to get somewhere wanted React array element, somewhere wanted React element, right? So you actually have to convert this into a React array. So you do that by at the end of this built.array.map, you just put react.array in a similar fashion to how we did react.string. So that's what that does. But what this will allow for us to do now is just make sure everything's working. So let's give it a shot. Let's just say test. And test shows up, right? Let's do test 2. And that's great. So let's actually style these just a little bit. I'm going to show you something else with React rescript that you can do, which is style inline. There's examples already in this project for you to use CSS, but I'm going to show you how to style inline just to show you. So I can add style equals, and then we do curly braces. And then we have to use the React DOM module, like this, and we'd say .style, .make, and then you add your styles, and they are named parameters. So you use the tilde. So I'll say like tilde background color. Where's the background equals steel blue, like this. And you'll notice I get a red squiggly here because the last parameter has to be just a unit or like empty parentheses, which is a bit of a gotcha. But now if I go up here and I add something, I get my steel blue. So let's add a couple styles here. I'm going to also add color. Let's make the color on there white. Let's make them padding. Let's do one rim. And let's do margin. Whoops, forgot the tilde. Margin equals, let's say 1 rim, 0. And that is, I forgot the comma. So that should work. And again, don't forget this last set of parentheses here as the last parameter, otherwise this styling won't work. But let's just see what this looks like. Let's type in foo there. Let's make the font size a little bit bigger too. Say font size equals 1.25 rim. Let's get big, 1.5 rim. Oops. That's great. And then we add some margin on there for more than one, so that works. So we have some styles now. So something else we want to do here is when we're done with one, we want to mark it complete. And so we're going to do a little bit of refactoring here. So what we'll do is when we click on one, we'll toggle complete, or is done versus not, like is done versus is not is done, I guess, if that makes sense. We'll invert that value. So to do that, we have to have a way to reference each item in the list. And we're going to do that with the index of the item. So I'm going to change this to map with index because we don't have access to, it's not like JavaScript. We don't have the access to the index unless we specifically tell it map with index. So it's a different function. And I believe the index comes first and then the item. So this is, again, opposite of what we're used to. In JavaScript or TypeScript, the item comes first and then the index. Here it's the opposite. It goes index, item. And now we have access to the index. And we forgot to add the key, by the way, on this. So let's do key. We really don't have a good key on this. Let's just add the title. I know the title is probably not unique. In real life, we'd have some kind of ID or something, or we'd have a better solution. Let's go ahead and just add that for now. Okay. So without getting too distracted, the purpose of what we're trying to do right now is to mark an item as done. So let's go up to our actions. We're going to say mark done, and it's going to take an integer, which is going to be the index. My switch statement just lit up yellow because it's letting me know that I no longer have exhaustive pattern matching. So that's great, very helpful. We're going to say mark done, and let's say index. And so now what we need to do is go to the to-do list. And now what we'll do is we're just going to map over the to-do list, and we're going to, if the index is equal to the iteration in the map, then we'll swap that value, that is done value. Otherwise, we'll leave it the same. So let's do this. We're going to say state dot to-do list. We're going to pipe that into belt.array, belt.array.map with index, like we just did before. So index goes first. We'll put I, and then we'll put, let's put to do. Let's open that up. So if I equals index, then we're going to say to do, let's see, I think what we want to do is say, let's spread to do, that way we have immutability. We're providing a new copy of this item, right? We're not mutating the to do itself. And then we will say, got this squared up, we'll say to do, we'll use exclamation mark, to do is done. So that's what we'll do if I is index, and then in rescript we have to put else. So else, we're just going to push the to do back. So real quick, just so that we're not lost, all this is doing is mapping over the to-do list. If the index is equal to I, the current iteration, we're swapping is done. Otherwise, we're returning to do. And again, if you're lost with this part, just remember that the last item in an expression is a return value. So it's returning this object, or I should say record, or it's returning just to do. So now we have that set up. We can come back down here and we can say on click equals dispatch. Actually, let's do it this way, right? We're going to pipe I into is done, and we're going to pipe that into dispatch. What are we? I think it's mark done, right? Yeah, mark done. There we go. So that works. So the other thing we want to do here is we want to make sure that if it's done, then we have some way to let the user know it's done. So let's go ahead and let's make the background color green if it's done. So we'll say to do dot is done green, otherwise steel blue. So let's see if this works. Go to store. So I'm clicking it and I'm not getting anything. Did I save it? I may not have saved it. Let's try again. Go to store. There we go. So we know it's done when we click it because it turns green. We could also potentially do a strike through. Let's do text decoration equals, goodness, let's see. To do dot is done. I think it's line through. Was it? It's not strike through. It's like a strike. I'm forgetting it. I'm blanking on this. Let's look it up really quick. CSS strike through property. Line dash through. Yeah, that's what it is. That's close. Line through. Otherwise, inherit. I guess. I don't know. Let's do initial. Okay. So we saved. And what's going on here? Why am I getting a... Oh, I forgot my comma. There we go. Okay, let's see. Another one. Go to store. Pick up dog. I don't know. There we go. We got our line through. That's perfect. I mean, toggle them as we go. Cool. So I think there's one more we're going to do. I don't want to make this video too long. We have that clear to-dos item that we made. Let's just go ahead and add that really quick, and I think we'll be done. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this button line. So this is my add button. I'm just going to put this here. We'll say clear list, and we're just going to say clear to-dos. So now if we add one to-do, two to-do, three, just gets lazier as we go. Everything still works, except now we can clear it. So that works. So this has been, I hope, helpful. We've gone through a lot. This is especially about how to put together your React state with a reducer, how to use finite state with type variants, to use our switch statement, which gives us exhaustive pattern matching. All those things are here. We learned about how to style. So I hope this gets you started at least in the right direction with React Rescript. Again, I have more videos on Rescript the language, and then some more stuff on Rescript with React. So there's all kinds of things, right? The routing is there. We can do this with Next.js. So if this was good, just let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll do Next.js next time. To do something more of like a full-on app. So that's it. Thank you all for your time.